Hey guys, welcome to the episode all about managing Git for Gitops. Now, basically, I just wanted to cover how to manage your Git repositories for using with Gitops. And you know what? It's occurred to me that you don't really need to change anything. So why are we having this episode? Well, the reason we're still having this episode is because I want to stress to you guys how, some of the ways you can manage your Git repositories. And when doing Gitops, you need a simple source of truth. I have seen some very complicated Git repositories, and I want to help you avoid some of the pitfalls that come from that. So today is going to be more of a discussion about managing Git repositories. Please leave comments, questions, concerns down below. If you like this or want to get involved in the chat, you can join the Discord. And I want to start a discussion around Git for Gitops.
3, 2, 1, 0.
The No Channel.
All right, so for this, I have developed a whole new workload just for you guys. So let me try to explain it to you really quickly. First, you're going to start with your main branch, like usual. And this is where all main development is going to happen. And then after you've done a little bit and you want to cut your first release, you're going to make your first release branch. This release branch is going to be there to hold all of the commits going forward for that release. Now, the main branch continues on, and the release branch can get things pulled back into it from the main branch. But now there's a bug that's only germane to the first release. We need to make a hotfix branch to fix that bug and to then merge it into that branch. And now it will have a different history than the main branch, or something that's not necessarily in it. And while this is happening, you also want to form a small team to make a brand new feature. And this is going to create a feature branch. Now, while all of this is happening, you're tagging and your branches, and you're keeping your branches up to date. You're cutting more releases, so now you're on version 3 of the application. And it's now required that you also keep track of birthdays and holidays in your branches, as well as bug fixes and whatnot. And when you do all of these, you also need to tag each branch with the username, password, and social security number of the user that made the last commit. If this sounds familiar, it's Git flow. Git flow is not really that horrible, but Git flow can be quite confusing. And one of the things, and one of the larger discussions that we need to have, is keeping everything as simple as possible. From your Git repository to your code base. Keep it simple, or I prefer to say, kiss it. And that's keep it simple, stupid. Or if your mom's in the room, you could say keep it stupid simple. But the whole principle is to reduce the amount of complexity in your day-to-day life, in your work, and in your project. And this is going to help. And for me, I think that it's very important that we use the distributed nature of Git to help reduce this. For me, I don't actually see any more need than just having release branches. Now, I know this is a perfect segue. There are some of you who will say that you don't need different release versions because all you do is support a microservice, and the latest version of that microservice is what is deployed. And if that's you, that is fantastic. That works really well and really can simplify a large portion of your Git workflow. That isn't true of a lot of enterprise software. So whether you're supporting an enterprise-grade database where there's long-term support, a Linux distribution with long-term support, or Kubernetes itself, you have to support multiple versions, and this is where the version branches come in. I find no need, even with Gitops, for hotfix branches or feature branches or anything like this. All of these can be solved in separate Git repositories. So in GitHub, this would be forking it. Or when you clone the repository yourself, this is making a copy of that repository. The single source of truth does not need to carry these. Now, you're going to say that there's every once in a while where it could save us time or pain if we did one of these, and you might be right. But the amount of pain that you go through to maintain all of these branches in your single source of truth and keep them all in your history is far greater than any pain you're going to alleviate by having them. And this is what I mean by your single source of truth and keeping it simple. You can make a fork, and your team on that fork can have a feature branch or a vacation branch for all you care. You don't really need to care. It's not canon. It's not the single source of truth. It is just a copy of it. And then when they have something that's worthwhile, worth bringing back into the single source of truth, either on a release branch or back into the main branch that you do all your development from, this is when you can bring that history back into the fold. And before it's in that single source of truth, that history never happened. And this allows you to squash your commits into a very nice and neat workflow so that you only have commits in the single source of truth history that make sense. Now, once it's in that single source of truth, you should not touch those commits. I 100% agree. But while it's in a clone of the repository, the truth is it's never happened yet as far as the single source of truth is concerned. So there really needs to be no argument about this, and if you're a purist, then so be it. But this doesn't need to be an argument. And along with that, everything that you do with your Git repository should be to make it as clean as possible. This goes along with using the standard pull request. This makes your Git history very clean. If you do a nice interactive rebase beforehand, squashing your commits into chunks of code that make sense to be in a single commit, you now have a very nice history that's very clean. This allows you, if you do all of your main development in the main branch, to make cherry picks back to the release branches. And I know some of you are itching to say, what about hotfixes that maybe you want to cut a release of for one of your big clients, but isn't really necessarily tested to go out for that release? This can still be handled. So just because you do Gitops doesn't mean necessarily that every tag gets built the same. So you could tag the pull request with the hotfix a certain way with, let's say, a hotfix tag, and a snapshot get created of said hotfix. It can run through all the standard test procedures, and it can run through your test and security pipelines. It doesn't have to get deployed at that point, though. And this can create a very nice hotfix pipeline because you get an automatic deployment that you could hand somebody if you wanted to, but it doesn't necessarily get deployed for all of your followers to grab the latest. You could also make this like two separate branches, a canary branch and a stable branch. This is another way to handle that within the same repository and just have two branches for the release. So I guess that is all I really wanted to say. Keep it simple. You're going to need to maintain branches. That's fine. I don't find any need for anything but the releases and the main development branch. Now, I'm half hoping that there's going to be several of you that disagree with me. I don't come out here to incite arguments or whatnot, but I would love conversations in Discord, in the comments below. If you disagree with me, if you know of a workflow that adds complexity but saves a bunch of time, please let me know. I would love to see your insights. This is how we can all learn from everybody sharing what their perspective is from their experience. My experience is the more complicated you make it, the harder it is to onboard, the harder it is to ensure proper usage of the system. When you have to train somebody on the system, you have a system that is overly complicated. No, I'm not talking about Jira, but yes, I'm talking about Jira, if anybody's used it. All right, that's it for me today. I hope that's what you were looking for, because that's what I ended up making. This is, by the way, the fifth time? This is the fifth time I've recorded this. I have done everything from showing you how to make a pull request on GitHub to this conversation. And so anyways, this is the start of the conversation. We might come back and circle around and hit this conversation again, but let me know what you think, and let me know if you like this type of conversation. And yeah, anyways, if you really did not like this, and you don't like Git, and you think Mercurial is the one true source code repository mechanism, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, stick around, and see if these videos get any better for science.